If you've been paying attention to the news or you've spent just 5 minutes on Twitter, or X, it seems as though everyone is suffering from depression. And to be honest, we've had more diagnoses than ever before. Honestly, it's truly the next epidemic. Now, with the sheer number of cases, you can expect treatment. The most common types of treatment for depression tend to involve SSRIs or cognitive behavioural therapy. Yet the problem is that these only really work in around half of patients, with placebos actually outperforming some of the former. Because of this, it's become imperative that we find a cure as soon as possible, since we're on track to lose around $30 trillion in productivity by 2030. As of this, it seems like science has raced to find a new treatment, but it's not the typical treatment that you'd expect. No, instead, it's drugs. For this, as I'm sure many of you know, is ketamine, and the literature is saying it's a good medication in battling depression. But the question is it? Let's discuss. Let's go over a bit of background history of ketamine. It was actually first derived in 1962 from phenylcyclidine in order to produce a safer anaesthetic with fewer hallucinogenic effects. You see, the latter was used in operations, but many instances of patients experiencing very extreme hallucinations were occurring, so we needed to swap to a different one, hence ketamine comes in. It was eventually approved for use in the United States in 1970 and became a common substance in veterinary medicine, generally used to tranquilise horses. It was only in 1990 that researchers began to explore ketamine's potential beyond anaesthesia, and it turned out that ketamine had a rapid-acting antidepressant effect, of which is quite peculiar for depression-based medication. Most treatments take a long time to work. Ketamine noticeably didn't. It really didn't. So psychology delved deeper and found out what the substance is actually doing to the brain. The most common theories were that ketamine is linked to our glutamate system. Glutamate itself is a neurotransmitter associated with learning, memory, and synaptic plasticity. It's actually the most abundant excitatory neurotransmitter in your brain. When glutamate binds to N-methyl-deaspartate or NMDA receptors, it'll typically lead to the opening of ion channels which allow calcium inside. This influx is crucial in many of your cell's processes. When ketamine enters the body, it acts as an NMDA receptor antagonist itself, which inhibits glutamate from being used in the body. Now, this has many effects on one's self. They'll primarily have reduced excitation, their brain will fire its neurons significantly less, as ketamine has anesthetic properties, and the brain will undergo structural and functional changes in its neuronal circuits in a process called neuroplasticity. This sees new synaptic connections form, which may be deletion of the ones associated with depression to replace them entirely. Even the neurotransmitter GABA will be released, too, causing greater inhibition within the brain, something that standard SSRIs for depression do not even get close to doing. Following all this, one will tend to enter a state called dissociative anesthesia, which is where someone will develop a period of catalepsy, amnesia, and analgesia, but in a favoured way. In fact, low doses have been found to even repair broken, damaged neurons, but it was even found to take this further. Not only was it discovered to affect glutamate levels, it was also found to afflict serotonin with the glutamate-serotonin crosstalk. Whilst, yes, ketamine is primarily an NMDA receptor antagonist, these networks are vastly intertwined. Eventually, glutamate antagonization has been seen to cause greater serotonin production in certain areas and even dopaminergic excitation. Basically, a lot of feel-good neurons which can combat depression. It's therefore not particularly surprising that clinical trials were soon developed to see if ketamine could treat depression, and the results were, we'll say, interesting. And we'll get to that in a minute. But they were good enough for the US and Drug Agency in 2019 to approve esketamine, a derivative, for use in a nasal spray called Spravato, a medication for treatment-resistant depression. So ketamine started as an anaesthetic to now a game changer in fighting depression. But well, is it actually any good? I suppose the first main advantage of ketamine as a treatment is undoubtedly its efficacy. In 2022, Efficacy did a meta-analysis, which is basically gathering loads of studies in the field and compiling them to see what the fuss is actually about. The team managed to source 79 studies with over 2,500 patients, each taking part in a study where they were given ketamine to combat their depression. Now, when this data was analysed, it was found that when the depressed patients were given their ketamine, their depressive symptoms did reduce, weakening even more with greater infusions of ketamine. What was even more interesting though is that these depression diagnoses had been summarised as treatment resistant. Nothing before had worked, not CBT nor SSRI medication. Ketamine was the only substance successful, showing just how good the substance is in this regard. But interestingly, this was not its only benefit. I'll use a different example to avoid a bit of bias. Yes, ketamine appears to be performing better than medication we've used for decades in terms of efficacy, but it also works significantly faster. If it takes patients on average perhaps 2 to 4 weeks for SSRIs to work according to NHS UK, this is absolutely trumped by ketamine having positive effects only 2 hours after it's been taken, with people reporting symptomatic changes as soon as that, if not before. We've even gained further knowledge not too long ago in that ketamine increases BDNF, or brain-derived neurotrophic factor, in the brain. This is a protein that helps make connections between neurons. In this study from Welfare, 53 clients were given either ketamine or a placebo. Those given the ketamine had significantly more BDNF only a day later, also proving ketamine's quick efficacy. SSRIs don't do anything like this. They mainly just focus on restoring the imbalance of serotonin. But even with their different mechanisms, if we directly compare their efficacies, which is something that's never actually really been done looking at the literature, this study from Shiroma in 2020 found that even if it wasn't a big decrease, every participant of 27 in his ketamine group responded to the treatment, compared to roughly 50% of people responding to SSRIs in other studies. Now, this information though is from a study with over 10,000 participants, so comparing it to only 27 is a little unfair. I'll let you draw your own conclusion. Nevertheless, there was even a study conducted on something a little darker, and I'll put a trigger warning of suicide here, so skip a minute if you'd like. Patients who presented with suicidal ideations were given ketamine as a form of treatment. SSRIs didn't work, and neither did therapy. Following the infusion of ketamine though, the patient's ideation of suicide rapidly dropped. They were generally happy, they had quality of life back to them. So, ketamine as a treatment for depression is clearly doing something right. But there's also a lot it's doing wrong, and it's time we talk about this. The first main negative is honestly the nuanced take of ketamine's primary positive, time. Yes, it's incredibly quick in reducing symptoms of depression, but it only lasts for a few days at most, with some infusions even reportedly only lasting a couple of hours. If you think about it, there are 21 million adults in the US suffering from depression. Do you think each of them has time to see a doctor every other day for a 40-minute session? Obviously not. It's one of the reasons it's still not being done in abundance. You see, as I've said a few times, it's only ever administered via infusion, a process that requires medical supervision. You can't do it by yourself at home, even if you're more available as a medicine. It's completely impractical. But here's another problem. If it's only lasting this short duration of time, patients are obviously going to want to source more. Who wouldn't? It's curing them. Yet if they can't get it, this leaves them only one option left: sourcing their ketamine via the street illicitly. Many studies have reported patients feeling as if they have no choice but to do so after experimentation. Much like any drug, ketamine is incredibly addictive. With something just like reducing depressive symptoms, this will activate the reward pathway in the brain, i.e. the ventral tegmental area. Then, through simple classical conditioning, people will seek more. It's another big problem of why the treatment is yet to be widely used. Is it really ethical to cure people of depression but get them addicted to drugs instead? And finally, obviously, just like everything else, ketamine infusion comes with their own array of side effects. Patients have reported dissociation, changes in perception, and most extremely, hallucinations. There's even been some studies on rats that saw them given ketamine, eventually showing them to develop some pretty extreme cases of psychosis, and potentially the equivalent of schizophrenia in rats. SSRI side effects have mainly tended to include nausea, headaches, insomnia, and dizziness, not psychosis. Furthermore, if people are to take ketamine for long durations, we don't really know what's going to actually happen to them. We've seen addiction occur after only a few uses, so imagine people taking it for years. Science truly doesn't know the effects this will have on a patient's brain. So there you have it. Depression is skyrocketing, and as of now, we have 2 treatments to think about. One only really works half of the time, giving headaches, sickness, etc. But the other works significantly faster, is more effective, yet can produce psychosis and lead to addiction. It's quite puzzling really thinking about it, where we should take this in the future, and I'd love to hear what you think in the comments below. And if you don't like and subscribe, well, no ketamine for you. Thank you so much for watching, I appreciate every single one of you. Be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed, it's free and it really helps me out. See you next time.